If I may, I'd like to do, say a few things, and then turn the conversation over to others. We're served a petition over I believe last Thursday or Friday, referred to as Justice for Spash Students of Color. It was a petition, had 1,000 signatures. It was a petition that we were aware of over the last couple of weeks, and made a decision to not address it until it was served. That said, we had the issue of equity and inclusion on the board agenda to begin a conversation, recognizing that these are issues that obviously we're dealing throughout the country, and certainly issues that are within our school district as well as our community. And quite frankly, it's time we put our energies into addressing the issue at hand. I had an opportunity to have a WebEx meeting on Saturday with 5 individuals, I believe, that were involved with creating the petition, as well as Ann Vang, board member Ann Vang, to discuss the petition and the topic in general, and what steps we as a school district are going to consider as we move forward. And I hope you agree with this. It was what I would say a positive conversation. It was like an hour and 15 minutes. Everybody involved had an opportunity to speak. And it's the beginning in terms of moving towards addressing the issue. But we need to understand what the issue is that we're talking about, I believe, first. When we talk about equity and inclusion, marginalized populations in general go much farther than the issue of race. We've got to also include other issues as it relates to gender and gender identification, poverty, special needs, LGBTQ issues. There are a number of issues when we talk about marginalized populations, and as we move forward, we really need to have an understanding of how we do so with a level of, quite frankly, expertise. We in our school district have a culturally responsive committee, really is limited, however, to equity audits as it relates to our current curriculum. But that has been in place for the past, probably 4, maybe 5 years, probably with a limited focus. Over the course of the last couple months, and I don't want to be viewed as reactionary to what's been happening around the country, but quite frankly, it's probably reactionary. These are issues that we've been talking about in our school district since I've been here, obviously not to the extent that we need to. But most recently, we've had conversations with representatives from UWSP, Todd Kukan from the Portage County Business Council has started dialogue, and it actually was an extension of the Tuesday morning meetings that I host through the school district with various community leaders. The conversation was an extension from that particular venue. Todd has included a handful of people to start the conversation at a business community level. I also know that the Portage County supervisors have also created some type of committee to address the issue of equity and inclusion. We also had a meeting today, myself, Meg Caleb, and John Vollendorf, with 2 professors from UW-Milwaukee that are considered the gurus, if I may, in the country, but certainly in the state of Wisconsin as it relates to working specifically with school districts on this issue. And after our meeting today, now more than ever, I think it's confirmed what I thought we need to do, or I thought identifying where we're at. And that's really at an educational place. When we talk about these issues, they're very sensitive, they're very challenging, and they're very, very, very complex. We need to understand what we're talking about, what we're trying to accomplish as we move forward. We're going to follow up with those two individuals, as well as our contacts with UWSP, to develop a process, a plan to move forward in our district. As it relates to the petition itself, internally we're going to take a look at that document. There are a number of things that we can all step back and say, well, that certainly makes sense, and we can implement those changes right now. There's also a number of issues on that petition that are very, very complex, that are going to take a considerable amount of energy from a community to make those particular changes. We're talking about a change of a culture, and that doesn't happen overnight. These are decades of conversations, and I think there's a fair argument we're right back to 1960s right now in terms of how divided we are on many issues in the country, but certainly this issue as well. But we're talking about institutional change. And with that, I'll be the first person to say I need some professional guidance, and I'm looking and learning in terms of what that looks like. That said, I will turn it over to you as a board.
So do any board members have anything that they would like to provide for the group?
So, I'll go ahead and start off on this because, again, I have talked to the group that started this petition. One thing I do, just by tonight's meeting so far, there is a lot that we need to learn, and not just as folks who are working in the districts, but as people ourselves in the community. It was earlier, Meg, I believe you had read an email from Alexander Eaton. I believe Alexander goes by Reggie. So we should be calling folks what they want to be called by and not what we see. So if they're addressing themselves as a certain name, that's what we have to go by. We also have to treat them the way they want to be treated. So we have to get away from the whole treat someone the way you want to be treated. This goes down to the smallest thing that we may think that is small, but is a huge thing, especially for LGBTQI. When we're talking about pronouns, if they're used, we should make it a norm to say, what are your pronouns? And we go with what they're saying. And if we are addressing them incorrectly, we don't have to make a big deal about it. Apologize and move on. And just from the conversation tonight, there's a lot of things that we can learn, and I hope that this is a conversation that we're not going to end on real soon, because I know it's getting late, but this is a subject that we do need to talk about. As per one of our conversations that I've had with someone in the community, it was brought up that, hey, since my school district has been, they've been asked about, hey, what are you going to do about this? And like, well, we're talking about it, but we want to make sure we're doing it right. My thing is, if you want to make sure you're doing it right without being wrong, when are you going to start? Because we know things are not always perfect. We are going to learn along the way, and that's what we need to do. We need to start this immediately so that we can say, oh, this is not working out. This is not what the students want. And we really have to let the experts come in. And when I'm saying expert, I'm not just talking about, someone from someone who's Black or Indigenous or a person of color. I'm talking about we need to get students on board, young folks. If you look at the petition, it has over 1,000 signatures, and a lot of them aren't even in the area. A lot of them aren't students, but they are alumni of our districts. And our mission is to prepare each student for success. I want to make sure we are preparing each and every student for success. So going based off of that mission, how do we get there? How do we make sure everyone is going to be a success coming out of our Stevens Point School District?
Oh, G, you're muted.
You're on mute.
Thank you. When I first saw the petition, I was all fired up because, and I talked to Craig and I said, I had taught at SPASH for 20 years, and I thought things were pretty good, but that was from my point of view. Obviously, they weren't, and in talking to teachers now, they hear things in the hallways and stuff like that that they're not quite supposed to hear. I've heard stories when I taught at the university from black students that live in town that were kind of harrowing, and it was happening right in our town. So I got all fired up. I contacted a pretty influential person here in town in local government and had a meeting with her, and she told me one thing. She said, "You think you know everything." She doesn't mince words. She said, "You know nothing. You got to start from there," because she went through the same journey. And I think we're kind of in that place. Like, I thought I knew it. I thought I knew lots of things about this. I know nothing about it. And she said, the thing you have to do is listen. And I think Craig has started that already by contacting some, what we would deem experts in this area so that we can begin listening. And also, as Ann said, we need to listen to students of color or marginalized students in our district. And I mean, we have to give them a voice. I thought I knew everything, and as this lady told me, I know nothing. So she said, start listening, and that's what we got to do.
Hey, Craig, earlier you had said that there are some things on the petition that we can, definitely do right away, and there are other things that we there's going to be a process to it. Do you all mind just pulling up that petition and what they had written? And would you just be able to go over the things that you think that we would be able to take a look at and look at possibly doing a change right away for those?
And we haven't gone through this as a cabinet. I'll give you one example. Increasing more cultural relevant music, for example, within our music department, having more culturally diverse food planning on our menus, for example. Those are just really small examples, but I'd feel more comfortable, Ann, if I'd have time to prepare for that.
So is this something that we can put back on the agenda so that we can go over some of the things?
This is an issue that's not going to go away, Ann. I had talked on Saturday about a task force, and of course that's what I know is in public education. When you've got an issue, you put together a committee, a task force, or whatnot to study and come up with recommendations. This is not an issue in terms of creating a program that's going to address these specific issues of marginalizing populations, specifically if we want to talk about racism. I'm not sure putting forward a task force right now and makes sense, and I know I talked about that Saturday. And that was after our discussion with the two professors from UW-Milwaukee. We have to understand as a community, and the first place of our community are our own staff members, our leadership members, and then the rest of our staff. Because I think there's, as G had said, there's a lot to learn here. And if we don't know exactly what we're trying to do as we move forward, we're not going to be successful. And if we don't have a group of people that have a core understanding of the issues at hand and how to move through that, I think we're setting ourselves up for failure, and I don't want to set ourselves up for failure. Now that said, there are a number of people that rightfully so are demanding, if I may, change right now. So we do need to address that right now. But what addressing it right now means, to be honest with you, I'm not quite sure. I need to learn much more to facilitate movement on this topic. And I'm not embarrassed to say that. I am not the expert in the room. I'm white, I'm older, I'm male, and I'm Christian. I am classified as the white privilege. So I've got a lot to learn, Ann, and I'm willing to learn, and I'm willing to do what I need to do as superintendent to facilitate change. But this change doesn't start at SPASH. My goodness gracious, issues regarding marginalizing populations begins in the home before kids even get to school. And this is a community issue. We can do an awful lot as it relates to development and education of our staff, but this goes beyond the school district, and this goes into the community.
Okay, so let me say something. When do we start? Because let me tell you a story about me, okay? But just bear with me, let me tell you a story. Again, I'm a product of the Stevens Point School District. Kindergarten through graduation. My senior year in speech class, a white student had given a speech about how if you don't speak English, go back to your country. The messed up thing, the teacher had to approve our written speech before we could give it. I've been out of school for 17 years. When does this change happen for our marginalized students? We keep saying, yes, we need change, we need change. We talk about it. When are we going to take action? I understand it's not a program. I understand maybe a task force is not the right thing. I understand you want to put in, you want to have meetings with a bunch of experts. But when I'm looking at this, we're talking about the Business Bureau or with Todd. He is coming from a business perspective. As a person of color, I should not be treated as a business. We have so many experts who are already building the movement and making this change in our community, and who I'm sure are more than happy to come in and give you their expertise. And if they're not able to give you their expertise, what they can do is they can recommend you all who you can speak to about making these changes. We can do much better than saying the change is not going to be immediate. We know the change is not going to be immediate. But when do we start trying to make that change instead of just talking about it? 17 years I've been out of school, and nothing has been done. Let me also tell you, I know you all are very uncomfortable with having this conversation, but sometimes these uncomfortable conversations for you all are unsafe for Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Along with having these kind of conversations, our queer community are not able to speak up either, because it's an unsafe situation for us, not uncomfortable. I want you all to know there is a difference between being uncomfortable and being unsafe. So for me to be speaking out and giving you all this, I will face a lot of backlash, but it's okay. I'm ready for that. I'm expecting that.
So
Could I
first
say
of all, I want to apologize to Reggie Eaton. I read what was at the top of the email, and I did not read the name that was in the signature, and for that, I apologize. The petition was submitted to the district on Thursday so that it could be included in the agenda. And I guess with respect to a number of the items that Craig talked about previously, those are items that there have been some ongoing discussions, at least among the community meeting that Craig and I have been involved with, and some significant conversations with Cabinet since George Floyd was killed in Minneapolis. That has been an ongoing topic. So things have started. The question becomes, how do we ensure that we continue to move down a road of creating systemic and substantive change that can be consistent and that can be ongoing, that can have the financial resources that are needed and other resources that are needed, that can have input in the most constructive of ways, and that can truly have that commitment on the part of our district to make this a priority moving forward. For me, tonight's the beginning. When we received the petition from the students, I did email them back. I provided them with information about our meeting tonight. I thanked them for presenting the petition to us and all of the substantive and incredibly thoughtful recommendations and suggestions that were within that petition. The petition now has been presented to the district with signatures, and Cabinet will have it to begin to look through, and again to begin to determine what are some things that maybe are short-term, that can occur immediately. What are some things that are going to require more thought, more buy-in, more information, more questions, more support, more voices, and then what are those recommendations within the petition that require really systemic change, which does not happen overnight. And the petition is one part. I mean, there is, I believe, a recognition within this community that we need to do better, that we have not been providing the focus to these issues for a very, very long time. And so the commitment starts here. The commitment starts with the board putting it on our agenda. The commitment starts with the petition being presented, and then all of the conversations and the reaching out for all the resources that are going to best help us, because we don't have the expertise in this district. I mean, I am not aware of what the issues are, frankly. I mean, I know the broad, but the concerns. I'm not aware of what are other districts doing across this state, across this country, that are better addressing and better working towards that systemic change, or may already have created it. And we don't have that information. So I believe it's starting tonight.
Okay. So
I believe it's...
I just want to quote someone amazing, Gajova. What she said was, we didn't do better because we didn't know better. So I am holding everyone accountable that we are going to start learning so that we can do better. With what you are saying, what we can certainly do is, you're talking about buy-in again, we're talking about business. What if we take a look at the petition, and the petition starts off really, the petition, these young folks, again, we have one of the, Reggie was also one who started this petition. Reggie is a current student in our district. And then the other folks are students who are alumni, and they're just recent grads. So they're not alumni as far out as I am. They graduated all last year. What if we take a look at the petition and say, hey, look at these recommendations that they have. Why don't we go from there? Again, going back on experts, what if I can find, or what if we have community members come up to us and say, hey, I'm willing to help you all out here. I have been doing this for years and years. Let me take a look at that plan with you. Instead of us trying to find someone, why don't we open the doors and see who in our community locally is going to be able to help us. It's great that we have other folks from UW Milwaukee, but just understand that UW Milwaukee is going to be a lot larger, and so their analysis on things may be different than ours because we are predominantly white community where we don't know a lot of stuff. More Milwaukee, they're going to have a lot more resources and a lot more knowledge than we do. So my suggestion is to really keep it local and take a look at what kind of work that they've been doing. I really, it's great that the cabinet is going to look at this, but how many cabinet members are from a marginalized community? Just looking at our staff within our school districts, how many look like me? How many look like Reggie? We know that there's not many that look like us, and I know that we talked about it before that it's a struggle to find someone that looks like us to come to our community and teach in our district. But how do we make it so that it's something that they want to do? What can we have to offer them? And maybe it's not the pay, but they want to work for a district who truly cares about all their students, who has this diversity, who has this inclusion, who is continuously working on their action plan that they have stated.
And I agree 100% that we need to start right now. We need to make sure that we're listening. We need to make sure that we're learning and we're bringing the right people to the table to have those conversations. We need to create safe learning environments. We need to create safe spaces for people to be open and honest and just strive to be better. So you are absolutely right. Craig has started those community conversations, but we also need to start bringing people to the table who can make change on a day-to-day basis. We know that we can do better. We absolutely know it, and I believe that cabinet, and I believe the group that has started the conversation is open to continued conversation and action. So we'll continue to have this discussion at a board level, but we'll also continue to have this discussion at a cabinet and at a leadership team level, as well as within our buildings. So you're right, Ann. I support your thought that we need to start now, and I want you to know that I'm committed, and I know that many other staff members in this district are committed to making change and bringing this to the forefront and making it a priority.
So, is there an echo?
Yes.
Yes, no?
Yes, there's an echo.
Better now.
Who's speaking?
Okay.
Judy, I think.
All right. I think we're looking at a bunch of different things. To Ann's point, as well as Craig's, it really is a community-wide thing, and it's very personal. So when we look at that, some things you may or may not know about me. I grew up in California and Seattle, and I've been one of 2 white kids in a class. Diversity is very big in my family, LGBTQ as well as racial. So I've been teaching diversity for probably 15, 20 years, and it really is a personal thing, but it has community impact. When we moved to Stevens Point, my youngest child was in kindergarten. In 1st grade, he came home crying, saying the white kids were mean because he was playing with the Hmong students, and the white kids were making fun of him, saying that he was going to turn into a Hmong. And I had to explain to him that he was the whitest white kid in the school because of the way he looked. So there are lots of issues, but these are all personal as well. And so when you're talking about issues, when you think about the students and the petition and some of the things that they're asking for, and talking to some of family members and friends that I know that feel marginalized because of their gender preferences, or even because of their race or any other factor, even socioeconomic, it can put big divides, but it becomes personal. And so how do we take a look at this and turn this issue into something positive where it doesn't become personal attacks. And I think that's where we have to be really careful. We need to do systemic things, yes, but we also have to do things personally, because we're dealing with people's personal feelings, thoughts, and experiences, and we can't ignore that as we focus on this issue, because it's huge. And as Craig says, it's going to take years and years and years. And it's little steps. There's not one thing that we can do that's going to fix it. So how do we start with some of those small things, and how do we pull people together to get that buy-in to move forward? And I think that's very important.
Can I make a quick comment?
Sure.
I appreciate Ann's comments and I appreciate Judy's comments. Obviously very thoughtful and heartfelt. So mine are just a little bit more mundane and nuts and bolts oriented. Ann is right. There are people in the community that teach this stuff. My Rotary Club last Friday morning had a presentation from Dr. Lindsay Burton, who's head of the Center for Inclusivity. I'm going to say it wrong. I think that's the title of the organization at UWSP. She gave us about a 35-minute presentation, and I got to tell you, it was fabulous. It was very eye-opening, and we need these things. We, as a, this starts at the top. It starts with the board, and it goes down from there. And we need to be including these things in professional development for our teachers. We just need to include it from the top down. And so I appreciate that people are looking at this and figure it out. But I'm just going to ask if right now we're not the only district in the state that's dealing with this. Can we get a commitment from people that will do a board meeting, an educational meeting? We've done it to in the past. I personally.
Trish, you're really breaking up. I'm not sure if it's your
I'm
headphones
sorry, let me hold
or.
my microphone like that.
Okay.
That help? Yeah, sorry.
That's a little bit better.
Yeah, in the past, this board has done some educational projects for board education, and I have found it to be really helpful. I'm going to ask if maybe Jeff and Meg can contact WASP and see if there's a presentation that we as the board can go through one evening that's maybe 2 hours long that gets this conversation started at the board level. I just think, I'm sure WASP has something, they have some suggestions. If nothing else, I'm sure Dr. Bernhagen can be a good local resource. But yeah, it's time that we start doing this, but we got to start this tonight. We got to say, yep, a month from now, our board is going to have an educational meeting where we're going to have somebody come and talk to us about opening our eyes to the problems that we as white folks don't see. And we got to start this. And so I'm asking tonight to do an educational meeting to sort of start this off at the board level.
All right, Judy, I just want to respond to your story. I appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing that story with me. When I'm listening to that, and that those are things that occur to all our students with bullying, and they come in different forms. But what really struck out to me, what you said, was that your son in kindergarten and came home.
And you cut out.
Can you hear me now?
Oh,
Yes.
Okay, so I'm not sure how much y'all heard, but so going back to Judy's story again, I appreciate your being vulnerable and sharing your story here. Had said to him that he was going to become home, and your reply to him was, "You can't because you're the whitest of white." Those are small things that you all may not think about, but if my child heard that, they would think, I'm not better, I'm not even as good as someone else, because you can't be that because you're white, you're whitest of the white. And I'm not saying you're intentionally doing harm, but those are things that we do without knowing, and we cause harm without knowing that we're causing harm. And I can say that I honestly believe that staff are doing things like that are very similar with unintentionally doing it. And this this is why I'm saying this is something important that we cannot wait any longer. We need to take the next step to do this.
And I agree. And, you know, part of that wasn't to share that, and I don't want to get into this, but it's the same conversation that I know that we've had with my nieces who are biracial. And my kids, when growing up, they wanted to have the brown skin like their cousins. And so it's conversations where you start explaining differences and can have those conversations and be able to talk about the differences and why people are different, how are they similar, how do we celebrate differences, and be able to have those conversations without getting people mad and upset. And I think that's one thing that we don't really get to do often. And so I'm hoping that, Trish, to your point, if we do start these conversations, we can actually have these conversations and an open, honest conversation without offense and be able to move forward. And I know I say things and do things that aren't always completely correct, and I appreciate that. And I think we need to be able to have these conversations. So I appreciate that, and I'm looking forward to moving forward with these.
So
Trish,
what-
we had, when I say we, Caleb and Connie, I had a meeting last week with Dr. Lindsay Bernhagen. She is the, works with the Center for Inclusive Teaching and Learning. So we are bringing in our experts, if I may, locally. We understand we've got, we do have knowledge and expertise in our community. We need to tap into that. I've got a meeting with Greg Wright Friday morning. Al Thompson from UWSP has been involved with conversations as well. So I think, Ann, when you say when do we start, I think we're starting. I think we're starting right now. And I know talk is cheap, and lip service is cheap. People want action. I get that. I also believe that we need a level of education, just in terms of what you just expressed, in terms of as a school district, as educators, what are we saying in the classroom that we're just completely unaware of? Because we are predominantly middle class of white population. We have to have a greater understanding of what we're talking about. It has to be very deliberate as we move forward.
And the one other clarification is the people we talked to today in this meeting, although they are located at UW-Milwaukee, the work that they do is with school districts across, well, the state of Wisconsin and also nationally. They're currently working with a number of districts within our state with truly this focus of systemic change that supports this broader, again, cultural change within school districts. I'm not saying that we as a district will work with these two women, but we are looking as a district to discover what resources are out there that can truly come in and do that more long-term work of really, as Craig says, turning a culture around and creating that as a focus and a priority system-wide, and how to best go about doing that. And again, being able to consult with people who have done it and who have done it successfully, and to be able to communicate with other districts who are in the process of doing it, or who are ahead of us in the game of doing this. And that work is starting as well, and will continue.
This is G. I love Trish's idea about a meeting dedicated just to this topic, but I'd also like to see students that have felt the effects of discrimination and exclusion as SPASH included in that. I think it's something that we've missed in previous forums. And this may sound kind of weird, and I don't know how you'd ever do it, to include students that perpetrated that discrimination. If they would like to come and civilly discuss their feelings. This may sound kind of idealistic and pie in the sky, but as Ann said, it would like to keep it local also. And I think some of the students that wrote the petition or other students have experienced that to come to the meeting and give us their stories on both sides.
Thank you, G. Thank you for putting that idea out there for the students who were deemed as perpetrators, because I think we really do need to hear all their stories. I think stories are things that we need to listen, and if anyone is willing to share their story, be vulnerable, and we can use it as a learning moment. I don't think we can just be taking statistics that other districts are providing. I think we, I'm gonna keep saying this, we start locally. We get our information here. A couple of months ago when we had talked about, I believe it was that safety survey or something like that, and I had requested it, I wanted to see how it was broken up demographically, and it really wasn't. It was just white, non-white, or Hispanic or non-Hispanic. And so I really wanted to see, what numbers were shown, because again, Stevens Point is a predominantly white school district. And so when we're looking at that, yeah, the percentages are low, but when we're looking at the percentage versus the numbers, they're high. Do we have statistics locally here in all of the in the entire district involving, reprimands or anything like that? That breaks it down, going, down to race, gender, anything like that. So that's what we really work on, and that's the information that we provide to, if you all want to bring in other folks, but that's the information that we would provide and say, hey, these are our statistics. What can we learn from our statistics? Is that bringing in the students who, the students that are part of these statistics, or what do we do? Because I don't want to just use statistics outside of our district. Again, we can't start comparing ourselves to Milwaukee or Madison. They are huge, huge districts. So I like to see that. I like to do as much as we can locally. I know you all said Greg and Lindsay, you all said they're local. That's great. I believe they're all white folks. I think that if I'm going to be honest with you all. What upsets me the most is that I am the only person of color on this board, and I feel like I'm always the one bringing these topics up. And I'm tired of having allies. I need accomplices. We need accomplices to help us make that change, because our allies are great, but I need that accomplice who's willing to go down with me, who is willing to be heard, and going to hit that backlash. That's what we need. Again, it isn't just start at SPASH. When is the best time do we start teaching this stuff? And the younger the students are, the better, because then they're continuously learning through the 12, 13 years that they're going to be spending in our district. Of course, as the students are younger, we're not going to have these really hard conversations with them, but we're going to meet them at their level. One conversation we had on Saturday was cultural appropriation. How do we do that? And I know that teachers are not intentionally doing it, but how do we talk? What do we say about cultural appropriation? Cultural appropriation is when we're dressing up as a culture other than our own. And I find this a lot in the elementary schools because of the wax museums with the presidents. Now, if a white student wanted to be Barack Obama, are we going to allow them to do blackface? That's offensive. Another story I have is my daughter was in second or third grade, and they had to do a little bit of research on someone and then dress up the part, and they had like a museum type. And I sat down with her. She was probably 7, 8, no older than 8, and I sat down with her and I had a conversation what cultural appropriation is. It's a beautiful culture, but it's not us. It's not ours. It's not our right to wear their traditional clothing and to go showcase that. We can certainly bring in photos to show what that looks like, but we should not be. We shouldn't be dressing up that part. It's not ours. I think we've all taken away the floor for so many of these, and I think again we keep saying tonight's the start. We start tonight, but how do we hold each other accountable of making these changes start tonight?
By creating a strategic approach to this, and stories are extremely valuable. To get an understanding of where people are coming from is very important. And you're right, you've got to be courageous to have those conversations, and you've got to be vulnerable. But then what do we do with it? How do we move forward? We need to have a systematic approach to move forward. Putting together a forum and listening to people's concerns and stories, there's value of that, but what do we do with that then? How do we go about making change?
We look at the demands and say we're looking. When I'm looking at this petition, there are a list of demands, and they do a really great job of giving us the hardest part. They did their research, and they're saying these are authors that you can take a look at. That's where we start. We start by taking a look at what these young folks have already given us. They've already opened that door for us. That, I'm not going to lie, that is the hardest part, is to do that research where it's a trusted person. I know we had this conversation when the home education bill came up, where we all agree that there's not one source that is going to be something reliable where we want to make sure that we're teaching it. But we go back to our experts. Even if they're not super well known, they haven't written a textbook, but if they're writing small stories based on facts and based on experience, that's where we start. Who says that we need to go to a publisher and use their work? Why not use the work of experts, experts by experience? How many of us know about historical trauma? Historical trauma is something that we carry, even though I did not go through the war, my parents did. And so I'm carrying their trauma, and I can't get an explanation from it, and so I had to learn from it. And I know that when I was in school, I was a troubled child. I'm not going to lie, I was a deeply troubled child. It's because I didn't have that mental health support in the school to go speak to someone who looks like me. So I missed a lot of school. And my older siblings also happened to miss a lot of school. And you know how we got labeled? As the problem family, because we always missed school. No one ever sat down with me and said, what's going on? Is there something more that you would like to talk about? We never had that. When I wanted to tell stories about, what's going on, it was hard to understand from teachers because they're white. They don't understand the historical trauma that I'm coming from. And so with my kids, I'm not going to lie, with my kids it's still difficult because I don't have explanations for everything. And I have to try and find an explanation from them, from someone I know that is going to be an expert at this. And that's what we need to do. We keep talking about systemic and we keep talking about this, but I think that we really need to go back and look at the petition. They did an amazing job. If you look, they even go back down to, like the background of jazz, where that came from, music, art. They really broke it down. I know this is a conversation that we had on Saturday is, we stopped teaching about false stories. I think the story that came up was Pocahontas. Disney has made it into some love story, but we know in reality that's not what happened. We need to remove teachings like this from the school curriculum and be teaching the facts. And again, yes, it's going to be super, super uncomfortable. We know there are going to be some families and community members who aren't going to be happy about this, but we need to be teaching real history and facts from history.
Are there any other board members who would like to make comments this evening with respect to this? All right.
So I do just want to say one last thing. I want to leave you all with this. I know you all are tired. We're all tired. There's a lot going on that, as a board, that we need to discuss and responsible, not to just this. But I want you all to think about the quote, I didn't do better because I didn't know better. But tonight, I feel like you all have gotten a lot of information. The petition gives you a lot of information. I also want you to think, what am I saying or what am I doing that folks who are from the marginalized community are going to look and think, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Or, you know, what's wrong with me? I also want you to think, what makes you uncomfortable? Is that uncomfortable for you? Because, again, it may be unsafe for us. Those are really things I do want you all to think about. There's so much, and I think this conversation can go on. And I would like to continue this conversation, especially after you all meet with folks. But we bring in the community members, we bring in young folks. What G said, we bring in the students that may have gotten in trouble, and we listen. We listen and ask them, how do you know, what is your learning style? Because I think we're so used to having a teaching style, but what is your learning style? How do we build a plan so that you're getting the best education from Stevens Point School District? And it goes beyond racism. It goes beyond cultural specific foods. We need to include our LGBTQI community. We need to be able to explain to anyone what non-binary means. We need to know the difference between sexuality and gender. Sexuality is what we're born with. Gender is what our body feels, what our body tells us we are. We don't have a choice in that. And I think those are things that we need to learn. And I'm not going to say I'm an expert, because I'm continuously learning this every single day. And it's because I want to learn and I want to grow. And that's what I want from you all, is to want to learn and want to grow and move forward. 17 years for me has been a long time, and I do not want to wait another 17 years.
Thank you, Ann.
And thank you, everyone, Anne, for bringing forward all these ideas. It's been a lot of information. So we will move into item C, which is referendum project update.
Kind of hard to shift gear after a heavy conversation. And I'm not afraid to have these conversations. I'm very comfortable having conversations. I just want to figure out my role in terms of facilitating moving forward, I guess is the best way I can put that. Stepping into referendum projects, as Tom said, we've got Jefferson and now Madison bids. And I think G had asked whether or not those will be done by the beginning of the school year. Actually, those might not even start until next spring, actually. There'll be prep work done. That's typically what we do, gearing up for the spring construction. We're completing our projects in our other buildings. We're on track. Overall, we're at or just below budget. Obviously with the COVID-19 issue, we've been able to move through our timeline a little bit quicker. But we are on time. We are at budget, and there's my goodness gracious, 1, 2, next year's our third summer. It's crazy. all the work and energy that's gone into that, the referendum, and the work is getting close to completion. That's all I have, unless you have any questions.
Any questions of Craig? Okay, with that, at this point, with respect to upcoming meeting dates, we are scheduled for a regular school board meeting on August 10th. Again, we will monitor things over the course of the next couple weeks to see if it's necessary, especially with respect to the school reopening, to have a special board meeting. And we'll let you know of that in a timely way. So with that, I am looking for a motion to adjourn. Jeff moved to,
I'm welcome to adjourn.
okay, G moved to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second, Judy.
Judy, second. All those in favor with aye?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? We're adjourned.
Good night, everyone.
Hey.
Good night.